Welcome to the M19 team reveal video. Alright, first things first, before we really jump into this, I gotta get a few things out of the way about how this all works and our procedures, our ideas behind this. The philosophy, if you will. So, for a lot of leagues, what they do is they'll take either the guys with the most seniority and give them their teams first, or they will do completely randomized selections. We don't do that. So what we do is, as you guys saw, I was going around in everyone's PMs, getting a top 5 list for teams. We take those lists, we take what we consider to be skill levels for everybody, and we use seniority as kind of a tiebreaker when two users want the same team. We try to get an end result that gives us 8 divisions of balanced competitive users where essentially you don't want to have a clear runaway favorite right off the bat in year one. Now, that being said, there are going to be. It's not perfect. There's not like some science behind it. It's just kind of what we think is best, and we're human. But anyway, so enough about that. Like I said, I wanted to be competitive, so things might look a little different. I will say, guys, be a little bit optimistic. We did get a lot of people their top 1 or 2 choices here. So let's jump right in. We're going to start off in the NFC North. And our first team reveal is going to be the Chicago Bears with Rick taking over. Now, Rick's obviously been around. He's an OG member from Madden 25. He wanted the Bears. We gave him the Bears. I think if you look at that roster, you've got Mitchell Trubisky in his second year. Should be pretty good. You've got a lot of weapons around him, and Trey Burton, Jordan Howard. You've got Allen Robinson now, Taylor Gabriel for the speed threat. So it's a good offense with a great offensive line in front of him. So you've got a lot of pieces right there. And I think given Rick's user skill, you can easily make Trubisky into a very solid quarterback very fast. So you look at the defense side of the ball, you've got Adrian Amos, who gives you some good speed and coverage ability at safety. You've got Kyle Fuller playing a good cornerback spot. You've got good linebackers in the middle. Thank God there's no Deion Jones there yet, but they've got talent. They'll be fine. So, next team in the NFC North will be Dan taking over the Packers. And Dan's got a kind of the OG rivalry with Rick. It's not the most pronounced or, feature rivalry we've had in the league history, but they've been around, they've played each other, they wanted to keep this whole rivalry going in this division, and Dan taking the Packers allows us to do that. Now, you look at that roster. Aaron Rodgers, you might be able to get through the cycle with him. You might have to replace him. I feel like Dan is the type of person that might try to move him at some point. Offense-wise, you've got Ty Montgomery, great receiving back. You might want to get someone who's a little bit more of a traditional runner, though. That's personal preference, I feel. You've got a good offensive line, not a great one, but a good one. And you've got some good receivers in Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb. Defensively, I feel like this is going to be a better unit. You've got good safeties in Morgan Burnett and Ha Clinton Dix. You've got Jair Alexander and a bunch of other young corners taking over there. I think you can develop those guys up. Linebacker-wise, Clay Matthews is kind of crap. You've got, what's his face? I think you got Kenny Clark down there. Defensive line's going to be good. Mike Daniels, great player down there, very underrated. There's pieces to work with the Packers. And then the final team in here is going to be the Vikings. Pode will be taking over. Pode, again, wanted to keep the rivalry going with Dan, so we kind of fit all these guys in the same division. Also wanted the rivalry with Rick to be in the same division. He's enjoyed that so far as the Packers in Madden 18. Now, the Vikings, I feel, have the best roster in this division and maybe one of the best in the game. You've got Kirk Cousins, good quarterback. It kind of depends on how the ratings play out for him, but he should be a very solid starter for you. And either way, you can't really move him with that contract being fully guaranteed very easily. You've got a good run game behind him and Dalvin Cook. You've got a good offensive line in front of him. You got one of the best receiver duos in the league in Thielen and Diggs. And you got Kyle Rudolph to be a good, not a fast tight end, but a very good, reliable target. Defensively, I need to mention the Vikings defense. It's Zimmer. You got Harrison Smith. Zendejo played a lot better at strong safety last year. You've got Terrence Newman, who's somehow still good. You've got Xavier Rhodes, who is going to be one of the better corners in the league. You've got a lot of talent to work with, and that roster is going to be ready to go day one. And that leaves the Lions. Nobody likes the Lions. Next division, we're going to flip to the other conference. We're going to go to the AFC North. We're going to start off with the Baltimore Ravens, who will be controlled by Spence. So Spence goes from DJ Johnson to LJ Jackson here in 9-19. Gonna have a fast quarterback. The run game will not be as good, but I feel Alex Collins is gonna be a good playstyle complement for Spence. He's underrated, I feel, but he's a decent power back, which is right up Spence's alley. So I feel like you can definitely try to do something there. Maybe you draft somebody later on. It depends on how these draft classes look. We'll never know. Offensive line is very good. You've got Marshall Yanda heading that unit up. You've got, what's his face, John Herschel somewhere in there. It's a good team on offense, just not a lot of star power, really. Lamar Jackson could prove to be that guy if Spence wants to lean a little more heavily on the QB, which I would not be surprised to see him do, even if it is on the ground game. You know, you can't put it all on one running back. Defensively, it's not a lot of star power again. You got Terrell Suggs, who might have, you know, like a season. CJ Mosley is a big piece here, should be a good user linebacker. Eric Weddle might not have the top end speed. Same with Tony Jefferson, getting a 83 in Madden 18 for some unknown freaking reason. Yeah. But Jimmy Smith should give you a good corner. You've got pieces to work around. You might need to replace some of the aging parts on that D, but should be just fine. Teams that's winning first is going to be the Bengals. Sam will take over. They're friends in real life, so we thought this would be a fun rivalry. They put these two teams as their number 2 choices, respectively. We'll get to the number 1 later in the video whenever I reveal that one. So, we get these two guys with the real-life rivalry and now the division rivalry. And I've got 2 teams that you can build around the ground game, which is what both of these guys like to do. You've got a good stable of backs in Cincinnati, especially between Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard. The offensive line's going to need some work, but they did just draft Billy Price, so there's a good start with your first-round pick. And then Dalton the Green and Eifert should be reliable enough for you to figure out the rest of the identity around those guys. Defensively, you still got Geno Atkins down there. Vontaze Burfict, not the fastest guy, but he's not going to be the dirty player injuring everybody in Madden. Or maybe he will. Who knows? Maybe they'll try to sell it as a feature. Regardless, you got some work to do on that side of the ball, but offensively, I feel like you've got enough talent to make up for it in the meantime. And then the third and final team of the AFC North will be the Browns, ran by Derek. So we kind of rekindled the old NFC West rivalry between the two bird teams of Derek and Spence here. And we also see how the 2 Ohio teams will battle it out now between Sam and Derek. I feel like Derek's a very good user. I would say dead even with Sam during his prime. And the Browns are always a good team to use in Madden, you know. They're young, they're fast, which is kind of what you get with youth. Even if they're not the most outright talented team, there's a lot of potential to improve there. And the best part about Madden is, since you're taking over and playing the games, you can circumvent all the bad coaching issues that have plagued them so far in real life. So we'll see just how well Derek does taking over the Browns. We'll see what he turns them into. I feel like he's done a very undernoticed good job of turning the Seahawks around from a defensive juggernaut into an offensive team. So, well, I'm interested to see what he does. And then the Steelers, nobody wants to take on your old rapist QB, your diva wide receivers who can't stay off the Facebook Live. And besides, Le'Veon Bell will be the big hot topic free agent after the first season, I am sure. So moving on now to the NFC South. We got the first team up, Falcons. They will be ran by Nick. And this is a very interesting choice to me. Nick could have had either the Saints or the Falcons, depending on which you put number 1. I feel like he's got the talent to use both very well. He's one of the best users in the league. Always been a very offensive-minded user in my mind. A lot of people have focused on his running backs, like Sean Cook, Frantanzi Herman. These guys have been great for him right out of the gate. But the Falcons are more of an aerial attack team to me, whereas the Saints are more of your traditional rush team now because of Kamara and Ingram. With the Falcons, Nick is going to have Julio Jones. I don't need to explain that one. You've got a young, up-and-coming receiver in Calvin Ridley, who should be one of the best rookie receivers in this draft class. You've also got Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. Might need to replace him at some point later, but you'll be fine right off the bat. Good offensive line, especially when it comes to pass blocking. And then you've got Devontae Freeman Tevin Coleman out of the backfield, both great receiving backs. On the defensive side of the ball, you got Desmond Trufant. You've got Deion Jones, who's maybe the best stock middle linebacker in the game. And you've got a lot of pieces you need to build around that. Takaris McKinley, Vic Beasley, a great pair of edge rushers to work with. So we'll see what he does there. Next team in the South is going to be the Panthers. Morris will take over them. Morris is one of the best users that FLG has. He's just been kind of quiet dealing with life internships and whatnot. But he comes in, interestingly enough, taking the Panthers over the Saints. And I kind of see it. You know, you've got youth on the defensive side of the ball, especially in your secondary. Whether or not that's going to be enough, or if you need to add on, remains to be seen. But you've got Luke Kuechly. You've got guys like Star Lotulelei up front. You know, Vernon Butler. So you've got enough talent on the defensive front to work with. And then on the offensive side, you've got a good offensive line. You've got Cam Newton, who is, again, like Julio Jones, a player I don't really need to explain the benefits of. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who I feel like is going to be a very vital piece of that offense. And then Devin Funchess should be proved to be a good receiver. Maybe not the star number one talent you'd want, but I'm sure Morris can make it work out. And then let's not forget Greg Olsen, who might not make it through the whole cycle, but should be one of the best options on that team year one. And then the final team to join them in the NFC South will be the Buccaneers, led by Andy, making his comeback to Tampa Bay ever since the All-Stars days back in Madden 25 and I think 16, before EA realized what kind of mismatched nightmares he was creating and just booted them from the game's code entirely. So Andy's whole thing back with the All-Star days and the Buccaneers of the past was to get big receivers, guys like Kelvin Benjamin. Mike Evans actually fits this bill perfectly, and just out-jump you. Just be bigger than you. I'm pretty sure you actually turned the Panthers into this team. And I'm mixing up my NFC South teams, but who cares? They got rebranded anyways. You got a big target there. You got Brait. I don't know who the heck they have a running back, but whatever. You got Jameis Winston, so you're going to eat the W's anyway. Offensive line is going to be very ratings dependent. But Ali Marpet should be at least a very good, solid piece to build around. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you've got Levante David, Gerald McCoy. You've got some pieces to work with. You've got some nice young secondary players. And Andy has always been one of the best team builders that we have had come through this league. So I'm sure he will be able to figure his way out and the challenges that come with that team. And now, interestingly enough, in the NFC South, nobody wanted the Saints. Nobody wanted them as their number one team. Now, I think I had like 8 people put them at number 3. But because everyone's number 1s and 2s are so varied, we were able to get everybody who wanted the Saints at 3 into their number 1 or 2 teams. So the Saints kind of somehow got odd-manned out here, which is weird. But Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Marshawn Lattimore, all of those guys are just going to be sitting there with nothing to do until they hit free agency and run off into a real team, I guess. Oh, well. Next to the AFC South, I will be having the Texans once again this year, coming back to them from the Raiders. Deshaun Watson should be much improved this time around. Offensive line, not so much. But I knew that. I knew that when I was going to make a decision to go back. Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins, Bruce Ellington should be a good, solid receiving trio to start with. You've got your prototypical star receiver, your speed threat, and your slot guy. And they were great last year whenever they were all healthy. Defensively, it's the Texans' defense. Come on. You got Watt, you got Merciless, you got Clowney, you got McKinney. It's very solid, star-studded front 7. The secondary leaves me with some other concerns, though. Kevin Johnson is going to be very ratings dependent. I would not expect much. Jonathan Joseph is old and will need to be replaced. Kareem Jackson will be hitting the same territory if he's not outright bad based off of ratings from the start. Safety-wise, Andre Howell, even though he has lymphoma in real life, the leaked ratings are saying he's like an 87. Now, I don't put much stock into those because they've been said to not be final. Tyrann Matthew should be another good DB, so the safety should be fine, and that's kind of been my one thing I've always been good at is developing safety, so it'll be nice to have that already done for me, but if it's not, oh well, I'll figure it out. And then the other team joining me in the AFC South so far will be Dustin O, taking over the Titans. And the Titans, I feel, are one of the most complete rosters in the game. You've got Mariota, he's a great QB, great mobility, one of the best in the league. I think Lamar Jackson might be the only faster QB than him right from the start. And obviously, Mariota is going to be more polished, more accurate than Jackson will be, so that's a plus for Dustin. Derrick Henry should be one of the best running backs in this game, especially behind the offensive line the Titans have built. You've got Dion Lewis as a change of pace receiving back to work with, so that gives you some versatile options. Receiver might be the weakest spot on this offense, where you've got Rashard Matthews, who is underrated to me, and you've got Corey Davis, who didn't do too much in year one, but you can blame that on Mike Mularkey's offensive scheme coming from like 1875. And I'm sure that you can utilize him better in Madden than the Titans somehow did in real life. Defensively, you've got Kevin Byard, you got Malcolm Butler and Logan Ryan at corners. You've got Avery Williamson, who's another underrated player, playing middle linebacker for your defense. And you've got Jarrell Casey and Ryan Arakpo as your star defensive linemen, who should provide you with a solid pass rush and decent run defense at the very least, right from the start. Again, like I said, this is one of the most complete rosters in the game. I don't think there's a real weakness there. I think that there's just average at worst. So Dustin should have a very strong roster. Honestly, better than the Texans right off the bat, as much as it hurts me to say because I am a Texans fan. But oh well. And we do not have some third team yet, so we still have 2 more spots to fill out. We have this, and we have the NFC East, which I will be getting to here in a bit. I would imagine that the third person to join the AFC South will be taking the Jags because of that roster being basically a younger version of the Titans with an even better secondary. That's basically the quick version on them because I'm not going to focus on somebody who's not in here yet. And I'm not going to try to project what a person I don't know will do. So, next division, we've got the NFC East. Like I said, we will get to that in a second. So, the first team here is going to be the Cowboys. Drew will be taking over once again. Only person to put them number 1. And the thing with the Cowboys is you always have the ratings guy on your side because he's got the obvious Cowboys bias. You've got Dak, you've got Zeke, you've got the offensive line, which is still one of the best, if not still the best in the game. Defensively, needs some work. Sean Lee will not be there forever. Probably will not have the speed that you would ideally like as a Madden middle linebacker. You have DeMarcus Lawrence, Randy Gregory, if they are indeed still on the roster because of suspensions. I don't know if Madden's really going to, deal with that. Whatever. So, you've got good edge rushers if so. You need some help at corner. You should be fine with safeties. Oh well. We'll see. And then joining him in the NFC East will be Ryan taking over the Eagles. He's a fan of them in real life. Had them as his number 1 choice. And even though the ratings guy's a Cowboys fan, there's only so much you can do about the Super Bowl champion roster. Carson Wentz should be one of the best QBs in this game, who's got good mobility, a great offensive line in front of him. Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement should be a good 1-2 punch at running back after that. You've got great receivers there, and Alshon Jeffrey. You don't have Torrey Smith anymore, I don't think, but Nelson Aguilar really stepped up again, too. Defensively, you still got Malcolm Jenkins back there. You don't have Patrick Robinson, so you might need a better slot corner, but if that's all you're worrying about, you're in good shape. You still got the D-line rotation. You still got Michael Kendricks at middle linebacker. Wait, no, you don't. You don't have Michael Kendricks at middle linebacker. You got a key mix. In other words, you'll be fine. And again, there's not a third person in this division. I think that this is going to be the weaker, less desired spot out of the 2 open ones between this and the AFC South. Just because the Jags roster is one of the best in the game and somehow nobody ended up with it. Kind of like a Saints situation there. But between these 2, I think someone will take the Giants. Saquon Barkley, Odell Beckham, Landon Collins. You've got all the star power there. And the Redskins just don't have that. So, next division, we've got the AFC East. Now, I think the Patriots could potentially be the team that, even though their CPU fights for a wild card spot if they don't actually get it. We see that usually in the first season of a cycle before everyone can kind of outdevelop their rosters. I think NFC side of things, I would say Saints if it wasn't for the fact that there are 3 users that are potential playoff candidates every year in that division. I think they're just going to be beaten back by users immediately. So I don't know if we'll see that in the NFC this year, but anyways. First team in the AFC East is going to be Roy taking over the Bills. Again, this is another case of he's the only one that wanted the Bills. You've got Tre'Davious White to build around on defense. You've got Josh Allen to build around on offense. I think the blueprint there would be Patrick Mahomes in Madden 18, if you see what Poe did with him. They're similar builds. Big, strong guys, decent mobility, accuracy issues, though, are holding them back. The first season or two were pretty rough with the overthrows on Mahomes, but once you settle down and you work your way around that for a bit, then you can kind of loosen them up, open your offense, and I think Roy can pull that off. Like, it's, defensively, you've still got some old pieces like Kyle Williams, Marcel Darius, they lost last year. You're going to need to replace those guys if you don't like what you already got on the roster. And you're going to need some new receivers, maybe another running back, because LaShawn McCoy can't carry your roster forever. Next team in the AFC East is going to be the Dolphins. Dustin G will be going back to Miami. He will be taking over, and the Dolphins are probably the most rating-dependent team in this game for me. You should have 3 good young corners between Lepet, Howard, and Tankersley. It just depends on how they get rated and what you can do with them. Linebacker-wise, you should be fine with Kiko Alonso. Who knows, man. Cameron Wake's going to need to get replaced. Rashad Jones might need to get replaced. You might want to move one of those young corners to a safety spot just to get all 3 of them on the field at once without having to rely on the nickel. But that's all personal preference stuff. Offensively, you've got Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills as your main 2 receivers. Not the worst duo ever, but I think Kenny Stills is going to be really rating dependent. Devontae Parker should be good enough to be your number 1 option. You've got Kenyon Drake as your main running back, who could probably be anywhere between like 77 and 85 or so. Like I said, they're very ratings dependent. It's hard for me to predict what to do with them. And then the Patriots, no, I'm just kidding. It's Nick Foles. Last team in the AFC East is the Jets. They will be taken over by Joe. Joe especially, he gets his own slide. He also gets his own franchise QB here in Sam Darnold, who is one of the youngest in his class, who should be a very complete, well-rounded, if not somewhat unathletic QB to work with. But that's fine. You don't need the speed. It's just an added plus. So, you've got good receivers. You've got a speed threat in Robbie Anderson, a possession guy in Quincy Enunwa. You've got Jermaine Kearse to be a good route runner and all-around guy. After that, depending on what kind of offensive scheme you want to run, you can fill out your receiver depth because they've got a lot of guys on that roster currently to do what you want to do. I think Chad Hansen or Darius Stewart will be the 2 first names that come to my mind, and I don't know if Joe will want to run a 6th receiver, but I would imagine that it'd be pretty easy to do that because of all the options they have there. It's just not like a 90-plus star in the group. It's just a bunch of solid guys all the way through. Tight end, you got Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I believe, who is still fast if he doesn't develop well. Offensive line is going to need some help, but it's not urgent. Defensively, you got a great defensive line with Leonard Williams. You've got Steve McClendon, who's an underrated nose tackle. Muhammad Wilkerson should still be there, I think. I don't know. Linebacker-wise, you might need some faster edge rushers. But Darren Lee in the middle will give you a good speed to use your middle linebacker. And, of course, you've got Jamal Adams headlining your secondary with Marcus May backing him up. You might need to put some better corners in front of him, but you should have a very good foundation. I think the Jets are going to be a great team that's going to be on the come up in Madden 19. On to the next division, NFC West. We're getting to the final 2 here. So Ty is going to take over the Cardinals. He's going to take his native Arizona team. He's going to take DJ Johnson. And if he trades him to Spence, we will mutiny and kill him. Or we'll just be mildly disappointed and bitch in the chat all year. Anyway. You also get Patrick Peterson and Budda Baker, who's really the most solid piece to build around on defense. You're going to miss Calais Campbell, but you already knew that. I'm sure you do in real life too. And you've got Josh Rosen to be the potential franchise guy. So I think you might know to put a better offensive line in front of him, maybe find a replacement for Larry Fitzgerald, and, get some younger guys into the front 7 and secondary. It's an older team, but that's Arizona. Ty makes a lot of trades anyway, so I'm sure we'll see people coming in and out of Arizona before it's all said and done. Rumors say the trade buck's already up, but hey, that's just rumors, right? Next team in there is going to be Meat taking over the Los Angeles Rams, who are one of the more desired teams here. Not quite Saints Jags levels desired, but they are in the 2s, 3s, and 4 slots for a lot of guys. Now, the thing with the Rams is they're a great team. They've got a lot of talent. You just look at it. They've got Goff. They've got Todd Gurley. They've got a good offensive line. Sue. Aaron Donald, LaMarcus Joyner. You've got a lot of stars, a lot of solid players. You've got Marcus Peters, stuff like that, a team to lead. But the problem is a lot of those guys have their contracts expire in 2 years. So really you got to plan right now for the future for that team. Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to resign? Who are you going to trade? You got to figure all that out early, because if you mess up those first 2 seasons in your cap management, you're not going to get back to where you were roster-wise. So I think Meat's been one of the better team builders we've seen in Madden 18. He took the Broncos defensive line, which is just kind of a bunch of guys standing around Von Miller, and turned the 3-4 line into a disruptive force that you do not want to run up the middle against at all, ever. So I think if there's anybody in the NFC besides Andy that can do it, it would probably be Meat. And I'm interested to see what he does. And then the final team in the NFC West is going to be Austin taking over the Seahawks. Seahawks are kind of falling from grace a bit. No more Richard Sherman. They lost Paul Richardson as their deep threat receiver. They still haven't really fixed the offensive line, but you've got a good running back stable in Rashad Penny, CJ Prosise, maybe Thomas Rawls depending on ratings, and Russell Wilson. So even though the offensive line is going to bring you some issues, you can work your way around that. Defensively, you still got Earl Thomas, you still got Cam Chancellor, Byron Maxwell, and Shaquille Griffin, and Shaquem Griffin should be pretty good there. Shaquem Griffin is going to be interesting. He might actually have low-end DB speed. You might want to try him at like slot corner or something. Depends on how the ratings go. You got Bobby Wagner, who's probably the best middle linebacker in this game, and running your middle. Defensive line is very interesting. I don't know how that's going to get rated. But there's a lot of pieces to work with still for Seattle. It's just a bunch of new faces and uncertainty that usually gets paired together. And nobody wanted Jimmy G. I mean, I think they were like number 5 on somebody's list somewhere, or number 2. I don't know. Big contract. He's 27. That does not translate well to Madden. Next division. Final one. AFC West. The Broncos. Getting taken over by Tommy now that Meat is going to LA. So the Broncos, to me, are kind of like the Seahawks, where they fell off a little bit because of regression in record, but the talent's still all there. You got Von Miller, you got Chris Harris, you got Bradley Roby, and now you're going to add Brandon Chubb, not Nick Chubb. Yeah, you get Brandon Chubb, so you got a solid pair of edge rushers. You still got Brandon Marshall in the middle there. You got a good offensive line, maybe a little ratings dependent. You've got Thomas and Sanders at receiver. Carlos Henderson should be an underrated, useful slot guy there. Case Keenum should be a good enough QB to get you through 3 seasons or so. Whether or not you want to keep him past that, that's up to you and ratings. Running back situation is a little iffy after CJ Anderson is gone, but like I said, between Keenum, Thomas, and Sanders, you should be able to rely on your pass game a little bit more and figure out the running back situation a little bit later. If you want to go QB later to replace Keenum, you can, but you don't have to. It's not a priority, which is good. The next team is Matt, the Chargers. The Chargers were a very hot team this year. They're like the Titans, where they're a very well-rounded offense, and defense, really. They just don't have the safeties that the Titans have. Like, the Titans got Kevin Byard, who's Defensive Rookie of the Year. They don't have that level of talent there. But there's going to be so many free agent safeties right off the bat in this game, I don't think that's going to impact him too much. Matt's going to have Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, a good offensive line. And on defense, you've got Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, Jatavis Brown, Denzel Perryman, a great front 7 right there. And corner depth is freaking insane. Like, Jason Verrett should be your number 4 corner out of the box. And he's like probably going to be like, I would say mid-80s just because of where he's going to be on the depth chart. But in reality, he's a really good corner. He's just undersized. They've got so much talent on that roster. You really only have to worry about replacing Phillip Rivers immediately, because they're honestly pretty decently young. Melvin Ingram's going to be the second oldest guy, but he'll give you at least a few seasons of good productive play. And then the final team in the AFC West, Lynn taking over the Raiders. Great offensive line. A little bit pricey, but that's what you pay for. You got Marshawn Lynch. You got to find a replacement for him, but he's still going to be really good. He's just a little old, and he's running out of Skittles. Derek Carr should be able to give you a good passing game, great throw on the run, good speed, just an all-around good quarterback. Amari Cooper and Jordy Nelson will give you a great receiving duo, but Nelson's also up there in age and might need to get replaced long term. Defensively, and this is where Lynn has kind of made his reputation, is going to be kind of a challenge for him, I feel. Gary and Conley's a good young piece to build around. TJ Carey should be a decent corner to get you through some years. Safety-wise, Carl Joseph and maybe Obi Villafonu, but we're not talking about my 99 overall Madden 18 Obi. I don't even know all that happened. Like, I didn't ever plan for it. I just kind of thought he'd be a decent athletic starter. So there's a lot of question marks there, especially in the middle. You've got a bunch of young guys like Markel Lee, Corey James still there. There's a lot of question marks on the defensive end, but if you're good at building a team blend, you can make it work. And then finally, nobody wanted the Chiefs. And yeah, no, they just didn't. I guess nobody wants to see Pat Mahomes overthrow everybody again because he's going to be completely improving this year, but oh well. That is all the teams this year.